culture.
Hi, everybody. I'm Crystal Haynes. Tonight on Greater Boston, a new Frontline documentary takes us inside the first days of Russia's war in Ukraine through the lens of journalists trapped in the besieged city of Mariupol. Two of the film's producers join me. Plus, the holiday shopping season comes earlier and earlier each year, right? So how can small businesses keep up with these massive deals? Ukraine's war against Russia is heading into its second winter, and President Volodymyr Zelensky is warning Ukrainians to brace for more attacks on national infrastructure. This as Russian forces ramp up attacks on key cities in eastern Ukraine. For the Ukrainian people, it has been a long 21 months since this war began. A new Frontline documentary takes a look at the very beginning in the southern city of Mariupol, where Russia began its invasion.
Someone once told me, wars don't start with explosions. They start with silence.
Лично видим визуально. Танки зашли с надписью Z.
Город Мариуполь блокирован со всех сторон.
Russians have entered the city. The war has begun, and we have to tell its story.
20 days in Mariupol follows AP Ukrainian journalists trapped in the besieged city, documenting the horrors that they witnessed there. I'm joined now by Frontline's executive producer and editor-in-chief, Raney Aronson-Rath, and the film's producer and editor, Mizner. Thank you so much for being with us, to both of you. I screened, the preview for the press over the weekend. It is just some powerful documentary work here, and leaves you haunted. Michelle, I'd love to start with you. This experience, the storylines that tie together, the connections that are being formed right as this all was happening in the very beginning is just really extraordinary. Talk to me about putting together this piece of this story that we probably will hear for years to come.
Sure. So the way that Frontline became involved with this film is at the very beginning of the invasion. Raney, who's here, was watching the footage coming in from Mstislav Chernov, who is an Associated Press journalist who is Ukrainian and has been covering this war for the past 10 years. And he knew that Mariupol was going to be a place that the siege would be, that there would be a lot of conflict. And so he went there with the team and they covered the first days. And that's when we saw the hospital bombing. And we all remember the maternity ward, the images of the victims. And Raney saw those images as well. And she thought, this looks like it could be a film. Frontline has a standing relationship with the Associated Press. And so she reached out to them and started discussing who made these images, who was behind the camera, and that's how we were connected with Mstislav Chernov, who's the director of the film.
Raney, talk to me about seeing these images and then putting them together in a story that folks can really understand what's happening there, because so many of the people in this piece say, "Here, roll the cameras. I'm glad that you're here. Tell our story."
Right. I mean, that was remarkable, right? That so many people wanted their story to be told, and yet there was a tension with the filmmaker and the reporters on the ground too. But yeah, no, we were seeing, as Michelle said, we were seeing these images. I thought there was something really extraordinary coming out of Mariupol in terms of just the composition and the way the stories were being told. The footage was really remarkable. We were all responding to it. And so that was the first idea, was maybe there was a documentary here. And Michelle was really the person I had in mind to collaborate with Mstislav Chernov, because Michelle's an amazing editor, as you can see. I mean, really, the magic happens in the edit room between the editor, producer, and the director. And that collaboration is the key to the best films that we have. And this is what happened, is Michelle and Mstislav hit it off very well and spent months together collaborating. And of course, I was involved too. But it's really about looking at what are the most seminal stories that we should be telling in a situation like this. We thought Mariupol would have staying power. We think it does. We think it's important for it to be in the world today. And it's really documenting something. They were the only reporters on the ground. So it's really, really unique and it's extraordinary the kind of access they had.
Absolutely. I want to go ahead and pull in a clip from the bombing of a maternity hospital. And the images here, we want to warn everyone, could be disturbing for some viewers, but we do want to roll some of that tape.
Без паники! Осторожно! Маму, дай Куда несем? Держи сюда.
Now, we also know that we follow that storyline through the documentary, and like so many chilling stories that are told here and continue to be told and happen on the ground, not just stories, but they're happening to folks, it has a sad outcome. When putting together some of these pieces of video, because when it's wartime, there's so much to cover, right? There's so much to sift through. Michelle, I'm thoughtful of how do you choose which connections to make for folks, especially when it's the beginning of this conflict and you don't necessarily know where things are going to go.
Yeah, that was the incredible part of working on this project, because he didn't necessarily know he was filming for ultimately a documentary while he was there. He started having an idea that this footage was so important because it was going to document a city that was essentially leveled in a matter of days, and the people there and what happened to them, and it would be a part of history. So he kept recording and he brought it back, and we looked at the footage and talked about what was a unifying way to explore and tell these stories. And we ended up finding that he was a good person to help us navigate this really difficult space, but also he was somebody, because he was somebody from the Ukrainian community, but he's also a journalist. And they asked him to keep filming. There's a really incredible moment where a doctor in the middle of a very intense moment begs him, please come in, keep filming. It's good the press is there. And so he kept filming.
Absolutely. And you see that as a recurring theme. Like we mentioned, there's a police officer, a few moments after we see that video, there's a police officer that says, interview me, ask me questions, and then wants to do it again in English. And I think about the urgency that is being felt there to get the story out. Raney, did you feel that when seeing the video, helping to put it together?
Well, I mean, you certainly felt that everyone who they were filming with were in such distress that they had no one to turn to. I mean, you see this at all juncture points, right? The fire, police, everyone's gone. Like they're very much alone. They're isolated and they're barricaded in, right? So they also don't have the outside world. So remember, all of that is very isolating for them. So I think the idea that they could tell someone their story, even to make sure that their loved ones on the outside knew they were okay, was really powerful. And Michelle started to talk to me about the sort of inside-outside feeling of the film. You're very much inside Mariupol, but the technique of actually then going out with the news, right? Like having a moment to see these moments, these news stories were making it into the larger world and having an impact really helped you right through the documentary, because you realize they weren't all alone in the sense that these stories were getting out. And that's really a testament to Mstislav, as you see in the film, finding the only signal he could find to get the news out. And so there was a feeling of urgency.
For sure. We also have another piece of tape, and we're talking about that inside-outside feeling, documenting what is happening there in real time and then making sure that people hear these stories, right? This is from the AP journalists. They're seeing Russia invade.
This is the first time I saw the Russian sign of war. The hospital is surrounded. Dozens of doctors, hundreds of patients, and us.
Incredible account there, being on the ground as this was happening. I think and you all both have really nailed this home, is that the journalist is living this with the people that he is documenting while this is happening in real time. And, you know, this doesn't give too much away, but we know that he has a family and then he also reflects. And I think that that's so important because as journalists, we don't always reflect in real time as we are doing this documenting of what's happening. So I think that's a powerful piece of this movie, wouldn't you say, Michelle?
Yeah, I think Mstislav was really interested in making sure that the film was not about him, but he was also willing to be the person who we could be alongside as we were taking in these events. And he felt so committed to making sure that things that are potential war crimes were shared, not only documented and shared in the news clips that he was sending out in real time, but also that they would be a part of history. And it's a conflict that's ongoing. It's a war that's ongoing. Mariupol is a city that people still live in. People are, it's under Russian occupation now. And so the story goes on, and those who have been displaced are living in other parts of Ukraine, all over the world. They've seen this film and they have felt, and Mstislav and the team, Vasilisa Stepanenko and Evgeny Malaletka, the other journalists that were with Mstislav in Mariupol, they've been able to watch the film with people from Mariupol. And they have felt like it has been a cathartic experience almost to feel like their story is being told, their story is being seen. And so it's so meaningful to be able to now share it on PBS and with Frontline when it airs in just in a week here, November 21st.
Yeah, I'm also thoughtful of this is coming out at a time where there's another conflict in Gaza, in that area there, in the area of the Gaza Strip. And some of these images look very similar to folks who are at home, and these are very different conflicts. But does it make, now that this is coming out and the timing of when it comes out, do you think that it gives the audience like that boost to think more about this? Sometimes these conflicts go and come in terms of the zeitgeist of what people are thinking about, but it reminds them that this is also still happening. And Raney, I'll ask you that.
I mean, the war and conflict in Ukraine is ongoing.
Yeah.
What we've seen this whole year, starting at Sundance, is that audiences have been responding to this, the singularity of Mariupol as a moment. People have been really expressing like gratitude that we documented it and made a documentary of it. And documentaries are to come of the current conflict for sure. So I think the more that we can do original, fair journalism that documents what's actually happening with context, the better we'll all be, you know? And I really do underscore context here. You know, you got a lot of context from the journalists on the ground. He tells the story of the multiple years that came before the Mariupol incident, right? And that's really important to Mstislav, is that there was always context when, you know, he was telling the story.
Absolutely. It's an important film and certainly one that will stay with you. Michelle, Raney, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
20 Days in Mariupol premieres on November 21st at 10 p.m. right here on GBH2, online at pbs.org/frontline and on the PBS app. All right, switching gears, next up, Black Friday used to be a single day of deals. Then the discounts started creeping into Thanksgiving, then the whole holiday week, and now it seems like the entire month of November is full of Black Friday sales. Well, this year, retail giants like Walmart, Target, and Best Buy have already had deals up for days, making it that much harder for mom and pop shops to compete. Now, when you factor in inflation, which is the rising costs of supplies and shrinking customer budgets, well, how can small business owners keep up? To answer that question, I'm joined by Nancy Nicosia, a co-partner of the SoWa Winter Festival, where she sells small batch olive oil that her family makes from olives that they grow in Italy. And Malia Lazu, she is the MIT lecturer and steering committee member of the nonprofit Small Business Strong. Thank you so much for being with us today, everybody. So, Nancy, I want to start with you. You know, when you see Black Friday, it seems like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and then now it seems like the deals are all year round. How do you think about the holiday season nowadays?
Well, I do think that discourages and hurts small businesses tremendously, which is one of the reasons that we started the SoWa Winter Festival. We have SoWa open Sundays through the end of October, and then it always felt like a little bit of a letdown because then there wasn't anything going on till May. So we developed the Winter Festival to fill that void, and we found that the artisans and small businesses have just been overly excited about it. They're all happy to be there every year, and they keep coming back.
Yeah. Malia, you say that really small businesses need to stick together.
I think the SoWa market is a great example of this, right? How do small businesses come together to support one another, to promote the idea of small business as Christmas giving, right? As appropriate gifts. And I think we're starting to see that where people want to be able to support small businesses. We know a majority of consumers will pay more for a product that aligns with their values and that they care about. We know people care about shopping local and supporting local. And so I think, the more that small businesses can support one another in taking on these bigger companies, the more success that they'll see.
And I think marketing, especially like having something handcrafted from someone who is making these, really has its own appeal rather than maybe something mass produced you buy at a big store, right, Nancy?
Yes, it does. And actually, we've seen a tremendous growth in young people's interest in that sort of product. They'd much rather buy a small gift for a friend or a family member, pay a little extra and have it be unique.
How has inflation and folks' budgets and things like that really affected your business and the folks at the marketplace there?
Well, I think during COVID, we all felt that effect. Small businesses in particular, but there was also a move during that time to support local businesses. So in some ways, it might have been a little helpful.
Malia, I'm thoughtful of sometimes it's easy to just shop online at for the big box stores, but it's also an experience when you go to a small local shops. Do you think that sometimes folks are opting to have the experience of shopping again now that we are years away from removed from the pandemic?
Absolutely. I think people are seeing these markets, the winter market that, SoWa is doing, other artisans do markets. There's also large companies. I know State Street does a market with small women and minority businesses. And so this idea of coming together, getting some hot cocoa and finding out about the olive oil, right? Because then when you pass it on to your friend, you're an olive oil connoisseur.
Connoisseur,
and
yeah.
You're able to say, oh no, and this was the special kind of da-da-da-da-da. Stories matter, right? Narratives matter, especially when you're giving a gift that's supposed to mean something. And I think, I agree with Nancy. We're seeing that young people care about these stories, but really people care about these stories. So yes, does everyone want to get the, discount on the 42-inch, or 60-inch, whatever the TVs are now? Absolutely. But a lot of folks want to have something that's going to mean something to people. And that's what small businesses allow for.
Do you think that the advent or the rise of social media and influencers help or hinder small businesses?
Oh, I think it's tremendous help. And also events like the markets help to expose them And so they can give samples, they can show their product, and that helps with the rest of the year with their online presence as well.
What do you think, Malia? Social media influencers, sometimes they have these storefronts that they're pushing and things like that. Does that help or hinder, small business owners?
I think it helps. I think especially if it's done responsibly. I mean, sometimes the last thing a small business needs is, Beyonce to wear their shoes, right? If they don't actually, if they're not ready for that kind of consumer response. So, I think if you are an influencer and if you find a brand and if you want to love that brand, give the brand a heads up. Let them know you are going to be promoting them, that they can expect to see an increase in their sales so that they can, support that. What we see a lot in Small Business Strong and MCCI that also supports small businesses is that sometimes growth and too much love can be hard for small businesses. So definitely influencers can help. And I think they don't only help to send consumers, but also to, again, have this story. Would you rather have your friend give you a $5 shirt from H&M or an $8 pin or an $8, something from an artist, something that's been made with love? And I think the narrative of I'd rather have something that's made with love is a narrative that we also need influencers to be sharing. Not everyone needs a Prada bag this Christmas. Some people can pick up a great, bag at SoWa Market for this winter market.
You mentioned, folks will spend money if it has a story, if it supports their values. They'll spend a little bit more on something that's handcrafted.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the very idea of not shopping box stores is part of the alignment as well, right? So what you see is it's over 80% of global consumers are willing to spend more for companies that align with their values. And what do a majority of consumers care about right now? The environment, right? They care about fairness. They care about equity. And for a lot of small businesses, I mean, I think it's the stat I saw from Forbes was 8 out of 10 small businesses have one employee only. So when you worry about things like the climate, when you worry about things like equity, you have a chance to support small businesses that are really growing and not centering profits in the same way. We know that small businesses support their workers in greater ways. They tend to keep workers for longer when they can. And so there's a lot about that story of small business that fits into the narrative that a lot of people want to see themselves as consumers.
And Nancy, I'm sure a lot of folks would rather want to buy and gift your olive oil than say, some name brand that they get at, Stop and Shop or something like that.
Yeah, and I have found the secret is giving people samples so they can try it. And then they're willing to buy it. It's hard to spend $30 on a bottle of olive oil, handcrafted or otherwise, if you haven't tried it. So that is one of the things that makes the market so special, is allowing people to do that.
Do you find that in-person experience is critical to making your sales?
Yes, absolutely. I often have my daughter helping me, and so it's good to have a second person to also discuss the olive oil and the process. And people are so intrigued by olive oil. It's really it's so rewarding for me, because we didn't start selling olive oil for business. We started because of our passion for it. And so that really makes it special for us.
Do you find with the holiday season feeling like it's coming sooner and sooner, we were talking about this off camera, that helps with sales?
Tremendous help with sales. Last year I sold out at the Winter Festival, which I've never done before. Lots of people are buying it for their dads for some reason. There's something about dads and olive oil that they just love it. So, and they can leave the market also with a nice gift wrapped package. Most of the vendors have special packaging, and so it just makes it so much easier for everybody as well. And the other thing is, we also offer the experience of, we have the mezzanine with music and a bar, and we have Thayer Street with fire pits and food trucks. So it's a whole nice, continuation of the Thanksgiving feeling and going right into a Christmas feeling, that you can spend that time with friends and family instead of waiting in line at a store.
Yeah. Malia, you know, if you can't get to a stall at the SoWa market and you're a small business owner and you want to generate the traffic, right? Because a lot of times you're really grinding when you have a small business. What do you advise small businesses to do to still capture that spirit of the holiday rush and the sales and things like that?
I think that there's the SoWa market, there's Black market, right? There's a lot of markets that are out there. But just because you're not able to get a stall, it doesn't mean that you can't participate in it. And when you look at places like Nubian Square, different squares, see where you can get yourself. Call Main Streets in Boston. We have a wonderful Main Streets program, which, helps small businesses get set up and get established. And so reach out to them. But don't be, I know it's a hustle and, you get tired and where can I set up? But there are places and you can try again next year for one of the markets. Maybe you can partner with someone and they can also sell some of your stuff at their stall if it's a complimentary product. So as I said before, I think it's just so important for small businesses to get creative, stick together, and if you can't get into a market, it doesn't mean you still can't find places where people congregate to let them know about your wonderful products. And places like Dudley Cafe, there's a lot of spots that are open to this kind of creativity.
And teaming up with maybe larger stores as well if you're a small business.
Absolutely. And, I think one of the things that we just think about stores as a place for purchase, but I'm also a big believer into going to where people are at. And there is nothing more powerful than like mom circles, right? Different groups of folks that come together to be in social and societal, to be together in those kinds of ways. And, I'm a big believer in mommy blogs. I think reaching women, especially with so many women wanting to make a difference in, and for their children and everything, these can be places that you can reach out and say, hey, I have this great product. I would love to tell you about it. A lot of times churches as well, maybe, doing some type of affair. So you can get really creative and find and go to where you think your audience and your consumers are at. And, the worst you can hear is no. And if you're an entrepreneur in small business, that word means nothing.
I know that's right. That's true. All right. Well, Nancy and Malia, thank you so much for your time. I know I'm going to get my list together and be shopping small this holiday season.
And Crystal, are we getting some olive oil? Because I think we should get some olive oil.
We're going to have to go down to the before it sells out, right? We have to go down there before it sells out.
Absolutely. I'll send you some.
All right. Perfect. That's it for tonight, but we'll be right back here tomorrow. I'm Crystal Haynes. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.
Whether it's breaking